Hi, and welcome to the Love Learns podcast. My name is Dionne Zara, just your average girl wishing to learn more about love and relationships. As a young girl, I always dreamt about my wedding day, and to be fair, I still do sometimes. With many couples around me, I quickly came to realise love isn't as straightforward as the movies make out. So I thought I would have conversations with couples who made it past happily ever after to learn more about love. And when I say love, I don't mean like the movies and fairy tales, but I mean LOVE, learning to be open, vulnerable, and empathetic. So if you're ready to learn, unlearn, and discover love through couples, you're in the right place. Hi, and welcome to the Love Learns podcast, where we learn, unlearn, and discover love through couples. This week we have Eddie and Sophie, where they did long distance between London and Copenhagen, Denmark. They talk about their story, and I know Eddie and Sophie through church as well. I've worked with Eddie for a very short period of time. When I was starting to work for a certain church, he also started. He was working there and just about to leave, so it was kind of like a transition period. But yeah, we've kept in contact on Instagram, and I reached out to him and asked if him and Sophie would come on the podcast and share their story, and they were very excited to, and I was so excited to have them because they were newlyweds as well. So we have a newlyweds. So last week we had Sam and Joanna, who'd been together for 6 years, and this week we have a newlywed, so we have it from a perspective of newlyweds as well. But yeah, they will tell us a bit about their journey. Eddie was here in London and Sophie was in Denmark, so they give us a bit of their story and how that works. So yeah, I need to warn you guys, in the episodes I was coughing, so if you're watching on video you will see some snapshots of me coughing, because I was ill that day when I was filming, but I had to deliver for you guys, so I had to make it work, but I just don't know how to edit it out like that. So I'm sorry in advance for the coughing, but it's a great episode, and please don't let that put you off the video. It's you don't hear me coughing, you just see me on the video. So those on audio, you don't hear it, so it's great for you guys, but the ones watching it, you'll see my face pop up here and there coughing. But yeah, I'm super excited. And also, if you haven't subscribed, please do. It will be nice to just be able to notify you as soon as videos do come up every Friday. So hey, let's welcome Eddie and Sophie.
Hi.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you guys?
We're good.
Very well.
Yeah.
Yes.
Good.
Very
Good. Could you guys just introduce yourselves? How long have you guys been together? How long did you do long distance for? How did you meet? That kind of thing.
Yeah, so we've been together for 4 years and a few months. And we actually just got married on kind of our 4-year anniversary. So we are newlyweds, just been married a few months. And for this time of dating, the majority has actually been as long distance.
Yeah.
And we've been doing that for, I think, 3 years.
Yeah. We
Yeah.
did 3 years.
No, I did visit you for like bigger chunks of time, but like it was a total of like 3 years. Yeah.
That's amazing. So when did you guys start dating? How did that start off? How did it all begin? Did you start off long distance, or did you start off in the same country and then kind of gradually worked into long distance?
Yeah, no, so we actually met in London. So Sophie was there it was supposed to be a gap year, and then she ended up staying for 3 years and a bit. So then on her last year, that's where we met, when we met. Then we started dating, and 10 months after that, she left to go back to Denmark, where she's from, which is where we're at now. And we decided to keep going. We were just like, we didn't want to break up, but we didn't know if it was going to work out. But we were both just like, well, you know, there's no point on breaking up now. Let's just try and see what happens.
Mm.
Yeah.
Wow. It's the truth.
It's true. It's true. Sometimes you just don't know what's going to happen. You just kind of go with the flow and try and work it out as you go along. So how was like what was the initial like reaction to doing long distance for both of you?
That's a good question. I think that what you touched on before, it was like we probably didn't see us doing long distance.
No.
Or see ourselves doing that. It was never in the cards or something that you kind of think, I want to do a long distance. So when it came, it was, like Eddie said, it was a bit odd to just end the relationship on that note. And so I guess I guess we took it very like one step at a time sort of thing.
Yeah, because we hadn't had a serious relationship long distance anyway, so this was pretty new to us. And it was, the first year was very much learning curve, just really being like, we didn't know what to do, trying to find out from different people that we kind of knew, kind of had done it, but so it was very much like learning as we went, and trying to make it work, to be honest, that first year.
Was the advice that you got from people who were who had done it before, do you think some of those advice helped? Which ones did you kind of try and then were like, okay, we need to stay away from that, or tried and was like, okay, this works for us?
This is really bad. I don't remember getting any advice.
No, well, I was the one going, like, asking people that had done it. And it's interesting, I think maybe only a handful, maybe less than 5 people actually are still together. So they did long distance and then it didn't work out at some point. But it was always trying to get stuff that was gonna help us. I think maybe the only thing that I can remember now on the spot is our friends Ben and Naomi, they did long distance for half a year, and it was in Australia, in London. So that's very different from us, because we were 1 hour and a bit away, like a plane ride away. Difference was the time zone and all of that. But I just remember maybe Ben, who's such a great guy, was just like, he always had to make time for that, you know, to call or chat, or even if they were tired, they kind of had to set some things in place, because you can't just also, one thing that we realized is you can't say, oh, you know, I might go there in 2 months. Like, you should probably talk about it and then actually make the plan, because that's better than just, yeah. So I think that's what I remember maybe from it.
So would you say the planning helped a little bit in the beginning, and how did that help you guys?
Do you remember us saying after 1 year, or as the first year long distance was ending, we were like, we should probably see what worked and what didn't? I think you said that, did you not? And then on the second year we were like, right, we have to make some.
I think in many ways the first year was the hardest, because it was very trial and error, figuring out what worked and what didn't work. And then in other ways, kind of the last year was maybe the hardest, because, you know, you were getting closer, and, you know, we were thinking about, or like we knew we wanted to get married at that point. So that was hard in a different way. But definitely the first year was like, I just think back and I'm like, we had no idea.
No. And
what we were doing.
Yeah. And then for the second, that's when we were like, okay, actually it works better if we don't just, because the first year was like, well, I'll go if I find some cheap flights, if I have time, and then on the second year we were like, the maximum that we could go without seeing each other was 4 weeks. So it was either we had to find something and put something in already at the beginning of the year to go, well, for us, it's really hard if we go past 4 weeks. If it goes past 4 weeks, it just feels like really long and you don't feel like you see each other. And so that first year was helpful in seeing what we needed for each other. Because I know some people would, like, they need to constantly be in touch, like the whole day they have to text each other, and that's how they kind of build a relationship. Versus we didn't have that, but we then needed to see each other every 4 weeks, versus some people could go maybe longer. So
and I remember now, the first year Eddie wasn't really keen to take any sort of annual leave when I was in town. He was like, no, well, it's just fine, you know, Saturday and Sunday, and plus Sunday would often be spent at church. So really it was one night and one day, and that changed.
That did change. Then I started putting it.
Yeah.
That's crazy. I think, as you said, for different people, it works differently, but you have to find what works best for you. Is there any thing you would advise someone else who was going through it, now that you did the first year and it was like completely different, and then you went into second year? Is there anything you would advise someone who's going through a long distance relationship for the first time? What would you advise them?
I think maybe two things. It's good to have some sort of overview of like, how long is this period gonna be? So I think for us, it was always my undergrad, so 3 years, which is a long time, but something changes when you have an end date. You know, you can always look forward to that and you can put in milestones, but if you don't have any sort of idea, I think that's going to be really tricky. So whether that's 1 year, 3 months, or 3 years, or 5 years maybe. Oh, that's a lot. But whatever it is, I think kind of knowing when it ends helps. And then also something that stuck with me is that a distance kind of distorts reality. So not being with someone, it's easy to then, start reading into things or misunderstanding one another, stuff like that. So I think just being able to be like, okay, actually, we haven't seen each other. That's why we're feeling this way. Or maybe that would be me, I guess. But I'm feeling this way because I haven't spoken to Eddie, or it's been a long time since we saw one another. And just kind of acknowledging those things.
I would. And then I would probably say, make sure you outline that plan, like whatever works for the two people, whether that's like how long you go without seeing each other, or like having that agreement and being like, okay, I'll like, I don't have enough money to go see you, but I'm gonna try. And I think if you have an understanding versus being like, yes, I'll do this, I'll do, we'll see what happens. That mentality can actually, like, it can not hurt, but it can kind of like slow down the process, and then someone can get hurt and all of that. But
Cool. And during long distance, as Sophie says, it can be a little bit distorted. How did you guys cope with conflict when that came in? Because that's, I think, when you live quite close to someone, you could easily just like either go to them and try and sort something out, or make a plan to sort something out. But how was that done when there was distance involved?
Well, I think we need to also say this. We are very different people from each other. So I think the way that I deal with things is very different from the way Sophie deals with things. And that's something we learned very early on as well. Maybe we didn't accept it, but we learned, like, we could see, why you're not seeing it the way I'm seeing it, or why you're not, and like the way I would deal with it is I would surround myself with people that I can talk to and just go to and be like, hey, this is happening. Am I an idiot? Or like, what do you think I should do? And it doesn't mean that I'm going to take the advice, but it's just good to kind of hear from someone outside of the little bubble to be like, that sounds weird, or that sounds right, but maybe have you thought about this other thing? And then what long distance did for us, I think, with conflict is it made us talk to each other. There's literally no other way, because if we were together, you could walk away, you could not want to talk and just like ignore each other, versus the distance, because we can't see each other, you could ignore it, but then obviously that wouldn't work. So it's like you have to talk. So I think from day one, it's always been like we need to talk about it and trying to figure it out. What did you say?
Yeah, I remember we also listened to Renee Brown. She was the kind of our therapist through this, and she explained the story of her and her husband.
Yeah.
And it was a particular situation, and it doesn't really matter what happened, but the point was that she got upset about something, and then when she had the chance to speak to him about it, she was like, why are you doing this? It really upset me. And she said, the story I'm telling myself when you do this is blah blah blah. And I think the whole thing of like the story I'm telling myself is this, that's a very good phrase to use, so it doesn't become accusing.
Yeah.
And it's like, you do this, but it's like, actually we are different, and that doesn't have anything to do with long distance necessarily. That would have been relevant.
I don't think so.
Either way, but like, this is how I feel when this happens. So I think that's something we learned.
Yeah.
As well. And then, like I definitely have more of a tendency to want to speak about absolutely everything. And Eddie's maybe the opposite, where you would go to people. So I think you've learned to maybe say more things, and I've learned to say less. And sometimes it is very good to just go to your support system and be like, oh, this is really frustrating. And then you find that actually speaking to that person gives you that sort of release, and you don't have to
all guns blazing,
damage the relationship, for something that is maybe a small thing or something. Yeah.
That's so good. That's so good. Like, I feel like you guys just picked on like so many little things in that short amount of time. But how did you guys find your support system? Like, how did you know actually these people are good to be a support system and these people aren't so good?
Yeah, I think for me, I personally was like, I want to talk to people that have not perfect marriages, but people that I can either I've seen how sometimes they've handled things in front of me, and sometimes or how they even speak about their relationship and how they decide to open up to me about it. Then I go, that's interesting. Like, I want to be like that. I want to learn how to do that. So it's just kind of seeing around me, being like, who do I actually trust and value? And, because I know, I think growing up and having other friends and seeing that relationships aren't perfect, and that's not what you should be after. You should be after a relationship that both people want to make it work. So that's kind of how I decided these are the people that I want to go to, because I can see how they handle things and talk about each other.
Yeah, I think as well, it's an important key to sometimes you have to be the first person to be vulnerable, because those people that you can maybe observe that you're like, actually, I look up to them, or they have a lot of wisdom. They wouldn't necessarily go there with you unless you first open up. So I think it's also been that matter. And I think you've been really good at encouraging me, Eddie, in that sometimes you have to go, or I have to go and be like, I need to just be vulnerable with a friend. And it's not nice always to open up and when things are not perfect because I think I guess I grew up with the thinking of like, if you want to be with someone, that it needs to be perfect. Like, surely you should be bigger and
Yeah,
all
this
of
is,
that
I had
stuff.
the different thing.
And you were completely different. So I think, yeah, opening up and figuring out. I remember we had maybe one of our first arguments.
First year.
Yeah, when we were still in the same city. I felt like, no, this is wrong. We need to end this. And I spoke to a friend, and she was like, no, like, me and my partner, like, we bicker every day.
Not just partner, husband. Me and my husband. Then
Not at the time.
not.
No. But
Right.
anyway, now they're happily married. But
Yeah.
it's just, that was kind of like, oh my God, okay. So I think by being vulnerable and open to people, that expands your view. And then going back to the support system, sometimes if you give a little, you can discern what comes back, you know? And if that's not good or constructive, then you probably won't do it again.
That's true. That's very true. That's awesome. So let's fast forward now. So you guys are now married, living together, and Eddie's moved over to to Copenhagen. How did that all come about? Like, how did you guys even make that decision of how things were going to move? And
honestly, that wasn't that wasn't the original plan. The original plan was, after she's done with that, maybe doing her master's in the UK through Denmark, somehow finding a way that it could happen, because then I was the one with the job and Sophie was working. So it was just like, career-wise.
Studying, you mean?
Yeah.
What? You said I was
working. Oh, sorry.
Which I
you
do
were
work.
studying.
I do work part-time.
No, you did. But that was like your main thing. So I, we kind of had chats about the career, and kind of like also moving to a different country would mean like starting over. It's another language. Yeah, and like most of our friends in common were from London or are from London. So that made sense. And then 2020 happened. But even coming up to our last year of long distance, we were starting to have conversations, and Sophie was interested in doing a master's, and just kind of like, we were like, would you be open to it? And I was a bit hesitant, I'm not gonna lie, to do that. And then 2020 happened. And then because I was then put on furlough, and the world was upside down, we were getting married. I mean, the whole thing was really stressful in terms of getting married. And then closer to the summer, I think before July, right, when I came, we had talked about it, and we said maybe the best thing to do would be moving to Denmark now, as Denmark didn't have that, like, was a bit more normal than the rest of the world because they were doing things right. Yeah, so I think a lot of small factors just started to make more sense. Doors were opening and shutting, like my work then decided a lot of people was going to leave the company, and I was one of them. So it was kind of made it easier to go, you know what, because we don't know what's going to happen. Maybe now is the right time to do this massive move. Is like, what do we have to lose? So that was when we decided, yeah, we're gonna, on top of getting married abroad during a pandemic, let's also move countries.
Yeah.
Were you guys going to get married abroad beforehand anyway?
Yeah.
That was the plan. Okay.
We always had the original date for it.
Date?
Yeah, the original date that we got married was always there.
Oh, like not from the beginning of our relationship.
No.
That sounds insane.
No.
If this works out, do you want to get married on the 10th of September?
No, she just asked about like if the plan was always to get married abroad, and then I said yes, it was. The date had never changed. It was always the date that we set, but back in December last year.
Yeah,
and then,
but even before we got engaged, we had also talked about getting married abroad. In fact, we actually talked about that on our very first date. Not us getting married, but just that it would be cool.
yeah, the way you tell this story makes it sound like we did,
true.
which we didn't.
Babe, you told me that you would want to get married you told me you would want to get married abroad.
Maybe I think I said abroad. We were at an Italian
you had that
restaurant.
wedding coming up, and we were in,
Anyways,
it was kind of in the cards, and we were very like fortunate that, like Eddie said, the date, the location, everything didn't change throughout the whole coronavirus season. So we were able to go ahead, even though it was the most stressful time ever. But yeah.
How did you guys navigate through that? Because Corona was another level of stress for everyone.
Oh my gosh.
But like planning a wedding, moving countries.
It was like
so many layers.
Honestly insane, because we had actually gone to see our venue in March. We had always said that we were gonna that date was set maybe in January. We were like, well, we need to see the venue because we booked it in December without seeing it. So we're like, okay, let's go see it in March. So we go, so literally the week leading up to the day, the like leading up to us flying, the news were like, the virus has gone to Italy, and we're like, the north of Italy. So we were like, okay, well, we're going to the south, so it should be fine. Flights were still happening, and then we came back. You came back to London. We had a chat, and then you flew back to Denmark. That week, Denmark decided to close their.
No. First off, literally the day after I got back, 2 days after we got back, Italy shut their borders.
Wow.
And then a few days after, Denmark shuts their borders. So that within itself is like, we would not have been able to get married in Italy had we not gone that particular weekend, or obviously before, because then we wouldn't have had any idea about the catering or the venue, anything like that. So yeah, it's a miracle.
And then and then after that, we didn't see each other for 3.5 months because her borders were closed, weren't opening. We were obviously in London, stuck in our homes. And then when they decided to open, I came over and stayed for 3 weeks, didn't I? 4 weeks. And then that's when I came back, and we were like, all right, we need to start now planning my move, and still planning the wedding, and then still trying to figure out, are the borders going to close again? Are we going to be able to fly? Are guests even interested in coming? We were literally just, everything was like, it was like 5 balls and you're trying to juggle them.
Yeah. But going back to the question, how did we navigate through that? Honestly, it wasn't pretty. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't thought through. It was literally a day by day situation.
It was.
And
I mean, I don't think anyone knew how to navigate life anyways, even like with work, and you're like, do I look for another job? Do I not? Like, am I going to be okay? Is my family okay? So I feel like we didn't know. So the only thing that we could do, I was always like, let's just wait and see, instead of making a decision based on emotion. Because Sophie was, and I can totally understand how it is very nerve-wracking to just be like, I don't know what's going to happen, and it's giving me like a stressful time. And then you just want to go, let's just not do it. It's just easier. But then knowing that the fruit of it would be so good. So yeah, it was just a lot of conversation between the two of us.
Yeah.
And this was like the first time since the first year, which you guys had 3 months between you. How did you guys navigate through that with everything? Because it was all of a sudden you're no longer seeing each other every 4 weeks. It's now 3.5 months.
That was the first time ever that we
that was the longest time,
without seeing each other for that long. I think it was very hard and at that point we were engaged. So it, like, honestly, it was really hard. My emotional health was up in the air. um yeah,
Yeah.
I think if I can take one positive thing out of it, it was that it kind of, well, I chose to be like, what am I grateful for? So, even at that point, we were like, okay, even if we just get married, we're grateful for that. Even if we can just be together, we're grateful for that. Versus, kind of before, and I guess you kind of do drift back a little bit to that, but before you're like, oh, I must have the perfect wedding and everything needs to be perfect. This, when it actually did happen, our wedding, it was like, we're just so grateful. And it doesn't have to be perfect, because the fact that we're here is already a massive gift. So I think that's kind of what we had to choose to do, and be like, I'm so grateful that Eddie had great friends in his life that he was surrounded by. I was very grateful. I went to stay with my family. All my parents and my two siblings did the same. So we had a very like unique experience of living together again after so many years. I was grateful for that. So I think it was literally about finding the positive things, but it was in our separate lives at that point. Obviously we spoke a lot, but it was very, very hard, I think.
Yeah. And I think it's so interesting as well, because it is our last year of being before you get married. You don't want to think back and you're like, I was miserable throughout because of this. So it's kind of like you said, just trying to be, okay, what are the good things, and just keep moving. I don't know. It was literally a decision of just, choosing to be okay, and choosing to be like, because I was here, I was in the UK, and I was just like, even though I couldn't really see my friends and I had housemates, and that was good, just actually spending time with them, or not, or just being like, I'm just going to read a book, I'm just going to like walk, because sometimes we didn't really have a lot to say, like, what happened to you? Oh, nothing. Nothing. So then you're like, yeah.
Yeah, I think after COVID, a lot of people are going to take away like gratitude as one thing that they need to practice more often. And I think that's what COVID's probably taught most people, which is great. And it's great to hear that you guys managed to do that all in your separate lives whilst still trying to like weave it into your relationship as well, which is great. So like meeting the parents for the first time and all these kinds of things, how did that all happen? Because it is, you guys were doing long distance, so there had to be some sort of traveling in between all those things. So how did you guys do that?
Well, I'll go first because mine is really nice. So the first person I met was, her mom came over to London with her sister, right? And those were the two people I met, and I was very nervous to meet her mom because she seemed very like regal and like very like just very, very nice. And I was just like, I don't want to mess this up, because I don't want to get her, because the quiet ones are like the ones you need to worry about. So I was like, oh gosh. But it went really lovely. And then a few months after that, I met your dad.
Yeah, then you came to visit them.
And then I came to visit them, and he was just like, from the get-go, like arms open, hugged me. It was like, so nice to meet you. Went over, stayed with them. So they're very, very lovely in-laws. Like, I love them. So we're very good, actually. So we're nice. I like it. I like my in-laws.
And you get on with my siblings as well.
Yeah, I get on with her brother and her sister really well as well. I think her sister and I are very similar, and I like to like wind up the brother.
To the extent where I'm uncomfortable. I'm like, oh no, it's my siblings. But yeah, I think I have amazing in-laws too. They're so, so sweet and lovely. But the first encounter was rather interesting.
It was awkward.
Yeah, that was in London as well. They came to town, and we went out for dinner. and we were like, you and I arrived first, I believe, and then they came in, and like obviously you kind of say hi and do a bit of small talk.
But then mind you, my parents are Brazilian who live in France, who don't really speak English very well, even though they used to live in England. They kind of moved away ages ago, and they speak French better than they speak English.
Okay.
So there's a lot of cultural and language barriers already up.
Wow.
Yeah. And I knew that. So I was probably expecting more of like a quiet, like laid back conversation where maybe I would have to lead it and ask a lot of questions. But anyway, it hadn't been very long before like we sat down, we hadn't ordered yet. And Eddie's dad literally said to me, so Sophie, what are your intentions with my son? And I'm like, okay.
Deep real quick.
In this question, I'm not gonna lie, but let me answer.
No.
So that was quite funny.
Yeah.
And
I think it was trying to be funny, make a joke, but also kind of like be not serious, but kind of mean it. But I just think he got really confused and read the whole thing wrong.
Yeah. But I actually, like, we haven't met now, obviously, that we live in Denmark. You've seen my family a lot more.
Yeah.
But even before that, we hadn't been together so like a crazy amount. But I think because when we did see each other's parents, we stayed with them. And because, you know, when you stay with someone, you kind of get to know them better, don't you? Because you kind of, you know, you're with each other in the evening, like in your PJs, in the morning when you've just woken up. And so I think we feel very close to each other's families, even though we haven't actually seen them that many times, but because we've had really quality time when we've been together. And even our families only met at our wedding, which is insane and not what we had wanted, but that worked out great too. And
they text each other now,
they
so
love each other.
It's like a family group chat now. That's awesome. That's awesome. I think sometimes it does get a little bit overwhelming. You could either have one of two ways. Everyone loves everyone, or like there's a bit of tension and no one knows how to deal with it properly. But yeah, that sounds, it is intense though, when you don't really know how to manage it. But well, it sounds like you both had different experiences, but in the end, because you have each other as well, and they know it's something real, they kind of just go with it, don't they? Like they know that, well, my son's not going to pick someone who isn't going to be good for them, and my daughter's not going to pick someone who's not good for them. So there's always going to be that like balance kind of thing, which is awesome. So last question, and I'm going to start wrapping up now just because of time. But the last question we did have is, how do you guys think, or what did you learn about love in your relationship? So when we say love, we mean learning to be open, vulnerable, and empathetic. So what did you guys learn in your love journey about being open, being vulnerable, and being empathetic?
I think that's really good, because that's something I wasn't very good at, like being open about my feelings and like being open about how and having empathy. Actually, something that she's really good at. Her empathy levels are huge. Mine are like not that huge. And I am very much, if I ask a question and someone doesn't answer it to me, in my head I'm like, well, you know, if you wanted to talk to me about it, you would have said it. Versus it's actually a follow-up question would be nice. And like just realizing that sometimes it takes a little while for the person to be, oh, they're genuinely interested or they genuinely care. So I think in love, I probably found that I wasn't as open, and for our relationship to work, I had to learn to have empathy, learn to be open, and embrace like feelings that I normally wouldn't put them out. I think that's been something great. And and probably as well, the biggest thing is communication, which I think you need it in any relationship, whether that's like your friends or your family or your spouse or your girlfriend or your boyfriend. Like, you need communication. You need to be able to speak to each other, because you're going to be spending the rest of your lives together. If you don't know how to, and that's something that at least we had from the beginning, or like we had to, not like we were like, oh, we're great at it, but we had to.
And we still do.
Yeah, exactly. It's still a journey. This love journey continues.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I think for me, it's like going on of what Eddie said about me being empathetic. I think it's easy to, when you maybe are quite empathetic or whatever you are, to expect other people to be the same. So then if I didn't maybe receive that back from Eddie, that would hurt me a lot, or it will hurt me a lot, because it can still happen. And I think understanding or learning from me that love is not, you obviously, but thought and action are two different things. So
yeah,
really understanding that love is not based on what I get, but it's like, okay, let me try to focus on what I can give to my partner, and also coming to terms with that we are all different, and that's incredible. And the way I am is not the one right way to be. And like Eddie shouldn't be like me to deserve my love. And it's actually a gift that we are different and we can learn from each other. So I think that's something that I have learned and am learning.
That's amazing, guys. That's so amazing. Thank you so much for being so open on this podcast as well, because I think so many more people can learn that, like, there's issues in relationships, but with communication, with the openness, the vulnerability, the empathy, those things can be ironed out. It's not just it's not what I think it should be like, so I'm not going to do it that way. But yeah, you have those conversations, and it makes life a lot easier when you're both learning, and you're willing to learn about the other person and willing to take on certain things that aren't so like which are a little bit foreign to you, but to the other person is just normal. But yeah, thank you so much for coming onto the podcast. And do you guys have any like Instagram or Facebook or anywhere that people can reach out to you if they wanted to, or anything that you wanted to promote?
I mean, I guess we could, if they wanted to reach out on Instagram, and if they have any questions about long distance, I'm sure we don't mind helping out and chatting to them. Do you want us to say it now as well, or is it going to be somewhere?
You can say it, and then I'll put it in the show notes as well.
Yeah, so it's at Eddie _ Rocha, ROCHA _.
And I am at Sophie Ramlove, which is RAMLOV.
Amazing. Thank you so much, guys.